For the Disney Channel, one of the biggest animated hits that have come from the early 2020s has been Amphibia. Being an American take on the isekai genre, Amphibia follows the adventures of the human girl Anne and her best frog friend, Sprig. Each episode brings new, fun characters, and there's a wide range of morality that can be found in various kingdoms and villages. Since the series ended earlier this year, we feel it's about time we break down each of these characters. Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Amphibia, Good to Evil. Before we start, we want to give you Amphibia fans a heads up. This is a large cast, so we won't be able to hit every character. We will, however, try to get to as many main characters as possible. As always, we're going to be starting with the most heroic and noble. These characters are the good. For our gold medal of good, we're giving it to Leaf. Although we don't see much of Leaf, the impact that she has on the world can't be understated. Originally starting off as the head gardener of Newtopia, Leaf was friends with both Beryl and a young Prince Andras. But for as much as she loved her dearest friends, once she received the vision of Amphibia's destruction, Leaf was willing to do what she had to do to save her world. This included running away and betraying Andras when he refused to listen to her, eventually sending the Calamity Box to the human realm.
If you won't stop this, I will.
But even after all of that, Leaf never stopped caring about Andras. She wrote him a letter, telling him what happened to her and asking him to open his heart, showing how much she truly did care. With no dark side and only having best intentions at heart, we had to give Leaf our top spot. The silver medal of good is going to Anne's best friend, Sprig. Naturally, as the frog who helped Anne learn how to be a better friend, it only makes sense that he'd get a high spot. Enthusiastic and sweet, Sprig is always up for everything. Sprig is incredibly devoted to both his family and Anne. However, Sprig isn't perfect. He is a kid after all, and as a kid, he often tries to do things that are exciting but not necessarily smart or safe.
What the heck are you and where did you come from?
One example of this was when he briefly became Frogman, causing more harm than good. But even when he's causing a mess, Sprig's got a good heart, which is what makes him a positive influence on Anne. And speaking of which, we're going to be giving the bronze medal of good to Anne. Originally, Anne was someone who followed the crowd, taking the lazy way out and not really standing up for herself. Despite being fairly self-centered, things began to change, however, once she agreed to steal the amphibian Calamity Box.
Looks like I'm gonna be here for a while.
During her time in Amphibia, Anne became more caring and responsible, becoming someone who would fight to protect her friends and stand up for what she believes in. She still makes mistakes, because she didn't know how to make good choices or be a good friend. But she would make up for these flaws and improve. What puts Anne this high, however, was her sacrifice in the final episode. Despite knowing that it would likely kill her, Anne decided to absorb the power of all three gems, defeating the core. Remember, Anne is only 13, so her choosing to make such a selfless decision is admirable. She may not always do what's right, but her positive traits easily outweigh her flaws. Next are her parents, B and Oum Boonchoi. Needless to say, the Boonchois are excellent parents. While they might not always understand their daughter, they still love her and try to help her whenever possible. Mr. Boonchoi especially seems really close with Anne, and while Mrs. Boonchoi may be a bit more stern and even somewhat harsh, it's only because she cares, and she doesn't want to see Anne go down the wrong path. When the Plantars show up on Earth, although they are naturally surprised by the frog family, they still let the Plantars stay, not wanting to turn their backs on the frogs who took care of their daughter. This leads to the Boonchois playing a big part in getting the Plantars and Anne back to Amphibia, while supporting Anne and even participating in the final battle on Earth against Andras. Not bad for restaurant owners. Up next, we have Hop Pop. Honestly, we shouldn't be surprised that the character whose voice actor also voices Goofy is so wholesome and lovable. Being older, Hop Pop tends to lean on the more traditional side and is often protective of his grandkids. This comes from both his paranoia and his tragic backstory, in that he's already lost part of his family to a heron. It gets to the point where his paranoia causes him to hide and lie about the Calamity Box, not wanting anyone to get hurt by using it. Obviously, Anne was devastated when she found this out, and while Hop Pop had a good excuse, it was still not one of his most moral moments.
What I did wasn't right, but I didn't do it to trick you.
Despite this, Hop Pop ends up opening up to Anne after Sprig brings her home. bonding with her and eventually seeing her as a surrogate granddaughter. Overall, Hop Pop is a pretty nice guy. While his paranoia can bring out the worst in him, it's his wisdom and love he shows towards his grandkids that keep him this high. Next is Dr. Jan. Serving the role as museum curator, Dr. Jan was the perfect person to ask for help when it came to figuring out the mysteries of the Calamity Box and interdimensional travel. She's a fan of all things cryptic and is incredibly friendly, being one of the most trustworthy people we meet on Earth.
It's just too dang exciting!
She helps track down clues and later assists in the building of the portal that was eventually used to get Anne and the Plantars back to Amphibia. While she doesn't play the biggest role, her help was important in the long run. This, combined with her sunny personality, earns her a spot this high. Next, we have the IT gals, Allie and Jess. They're all about robots, and it's only with their help that Polly is able to fix her own robot, Frobo. When Polly reaches out to them, they don't even hesitate to offer some help and advice when it comes to robotics. Unfortunately, sometimes they can be a little too into robots, like when they were briefly too amazed by the Santa robot to help defeat it, though they were able to snap out of it eventually. Much like Dr. Jan and another human we'll get to in a moment, they were also instrumental in the creation of a portal back to Amphibia. Beyond all the help they provide, their friendship with Polly is just sweet, easily putting them in a good light. Next, we have Ivy Sundew. She's both the sparring partner and close friend/girlfriend of Sprig, having nearly as much energy as him and always up for an adventure. While she can be forceful with her ambushing habit, Ivy's still nice, and she never tries to actually hurt her friends. Ivy, as well as Sprig, is willing to push her relationship with her boyfriend to the side for the sake of the mission, showing that she can still be selfless when she needs to be.
Let's catch some bugs.
Okay!
The only thing that she sometimes struggles with is her relationship with her mother, which leads to Ivy feeling frustrated and disobeying her mother. Eventually, though, they are thankfully able to find the common ground. She has the personality of the quirky girl next door, and it's no wonder that she gets along so well with Sprig. Now we have Terry. Originally, Terry worked for Dr. Frakes. Unlike the mad scientist, Terry was not only more down to earth but also much friendlier and respectful. We also learn that Terry went into science to help people, not to pursue fame and fortune. This comes to a head when she decides to go against her boss and help Anne and the Plantars, leading to her getting fired. But this doesn't stop her from continuing to help her friends, and we see her use her own resources to help with the portal. Even if she may have technically been on the wrong side originally, it was obvious that Terry was never a bad person, hence why she still gets a decent spot in this tier. Following her is the Great Mother Olm. She is the oldest and wisest creature in Amphibia. She is beyond the judgment that other amphibian citizens can sometimes display towards outsiders. Mother Olm is instead patient, kind, and incredibly wise. She even comforts Hop Pop about growing older, telling him that it's not too bad. Unfortunately, this doesn't stop Mother Olm from falling to some typically elderly faults, like rambling on and being forgetful.
Guess you're not so useless after all.
We also have to question her methods. While no, she didn't force Anne to sacrifice herself, her revealing that it was even an option may have been in Amphibia's best interest, but wasn't exactly in Anne's best interest. Outside of this, she remains a reliable ally, offering both warnings and support during the most dangerous of times. Next is the youngest member of the Plantar family, Polly. Despite being a young tadpole, Polly is nearly fearless, being both an explorer and a fighter at heart. Don't get on her bad side or you may just get attacked by her and her rolling pin Doris. Though her slightly violent side can be funny, it can also be just a bit concerning in that she can sometimes really struggle to control her anger and stay out of fights. However, Polly does have her soft moments. She loves her family, even Sprig, despite how often they may argue, and she becomes incredibly loyal to her robot Frobo.
But I think I'm just about finished.
Polly's bravery is also admirable, and while she may accept candy bribes, we're willing to let that slide, since she's essentially still a baby. Next, we have Lady Olivia and General Yunnan. They were the highest members of King Andreas' court, but much like Terry, just because they may have started off on the wrong side doesn't mean that they were bad people. Far from it, in fact. Sure, Olivia was aloof and apathetic, and Yunnan could be fairly violent, but no matter what, they always tried to do what they thought was best.
She's very important, blah blah blah. We don't have time for this, come on!
This included supporting Marcy, even to the point of going against their king to save her. In a way, they almost become like parental figures to her. Olivia especially is fond of Marcy and is always polite towards her, despite sometimes being annoyed. Additionally, while Yunnan may have a huge ego, given how often she boasts about her accomplishments, she still has a sense of honor as a warrior, refusing to work for her king after learning his true intentions. In terms of newts, they are pretty good representations of the best parts of this kingdom. Finishing up the good, we have Maddie Flower. As Maddie says, even though she's creepy, doesn't mean she's a bad person, even if she's still questionable at times. While others may see her witchiness as a sign that she's secretly evil, for the most part, Maddie is actually interested in using her magic for good. Even when Sprig upsets her, she doesn't try to curse him. In fact, she tries to help him find the actual source of the curse. However, because she sees her witching activities as a responsibility, this causes her to neglect her actual responsibilities, like being a good sister to her younger siblings. Thankfully, Maddie's able to soon rectify this, showing that she still cares about her sisters even when they frustrate her. Next are the characters that don't quite hit that good mark, but still have enough redeemable traits that keeps them from being truly villainous. Welcome to the gray area. First, we have the leader of Wartwood, Mayor Toadstool. Arguably the series' first antagonist, Toadstool fell under the typical bad mayor cliches that a lot of animated shows play into. He's greedy, arrogant, self-centered, is willing to cheat and bribe others, and even looks down on the frogs. Thankfully, while it may have taken a full season, Toadstool starts to improve. He became more helpful and less selfish, even saving the lives of several Wartwood citizens. He also joins the resistance in the third season. Although he never quite breaks his bribery habit, we can appreciate a character who tries to improve, much like our following entry. Next is the pink member of the Calamity Trio, Sasha. To say that Sasha was a toxic friend would be an understatement. Everyone in the trio had flaws, but Sasha definitely had the most.
No worries. You just gotta speak their language.
Her main flaw was her need to control and manipulate others, being someone who knew how to use her socializing abilities to her advantage. She was also a rule breaker, often sneaking out of school and spraying graffiti. Much to everyone else's frustration, Sasha bounces between being selfish and pushing others to do what she wants, and being genuinely caring about the people she loves. In the third temple episode, you saw how protective she was, though this doesn't stop her from betraying her friends yet again at the end of season 2. This all culminates in the third season when Sasha finally accepts her flaws and actually tries to be better, becoming Wartwood's new protector and eventually moving on to lead the rebellion. She also stopped Marcy, freeing Marcy from the Corps' control. Next to end, it could be argued that Sasha had one of the most satisfying character arcs of the entire series, and while we couldn't put her in the good tier, we'd say that the upper gray spot on our list is fitting. Next is the final Calamity Trio member, Marcy. Originally thought to be the most innocent member due to her being clumsy and adorkable, we soon learned that there was much more to Marcy than meets the eye. Let's just get her worst deed out of the way first. Marcy got them sent to Amphibia. Although she didn't believe it would actually work, she still kept the possibility a secret. Marcy might have never revealed the truth if not for Andras, which is a huge deal. Her attempts at trying to downplay the entire thing honestly just made things worse, but eventually, after being taken over by the Corps and sent into a fantasy realm, Marcy was eventually able to realize that she was indeed in the wrong, that it was better to live in reality than to live in a fake world, and that she shouldn't have forced her fantasies onto her friends.
And Sasha, I believe in you.
In terms of other positives, she's friendly, and while her selfishness may blind her at times, you can be sure that she'll eventually find her way and do what's right for her friends. While we couldn't put her any higher due to her big initial mistake, we also felt she didn't deserve to be any lower. Next is Captain Grime. Next to Sasha, Grime served as an antagonist for the first 2 seasons. Grime was someone who was always tough on his soldiers, demanding both success and respect, and often getting frustrated when he doesn't get this. Despite his gruff appearance, Grime has a pretty big soft side. We mostly see this through a strong bond with Sasha, and that he always has her back and even tries to give her advice. In the second to last episode, Grime saves Sasha from being killed, and in turn, loses one of his arms for it. Grime also learns to be nicer to his soldiers, strengthening their loyalty. For as much as Grime once desired power and control, it soon became clear that Grime cared more about his connections with people even more, pushing him to eventually become more of a hero than a tyrant. Finishing up the gray area is Mr. X. When the Plantars are stuck on Earth, it's Mr. X who serves as both the main antagonist and the main threat of this arc. Being a government agent, Mr. X is the type to assume the worst of anything strange or alien, with this paranoia resulting in his attempts to capture the Frog family. Although he may come off as flamboyant, he takes his job very seriously, and it takes a lot for him to finally back down. He can also be a jerk, like when he chooses to mock Anne for no reason other than just to be cruel.
And you? You're nothing but a child.
So with all these flaws, you may wonder why he's not in the bad tier. Well, while we would have liked it to happen much earlier, Mr. X is able to eventually change his views on frog people after the Boon Choys explain everything. Additionally, when Andras tries to invade Earth, Mr. X plays his part in trying to fight Andras' robots off. There's also a really nice moment where, after seeing how exhausted she is, Mr. X starts playing Anne's favorite K-pop song, re-energizing her and helping her finish the fight. While it doesn't excuse the negative and problematic things that he did, it's still nice to see a character make a true turnaround. Finally, we've arrived at the cruel and the wicked. These characters are the bad to evil. Getting the bronze medal of evil is the eccentric Dr. Frakes. Though she may not hold a candle to the true big bad to the show, we felt that she still deserved a mention. Simply put, Dr. Frakes is a total loose cannon when it comes to her science experiments. She's both reckless and unethical, not caring one bit about her test subjects and instead only being focused on fame. We see this in how eager she was to dissect the plantars once she saw what they were. Unlike every other character we've had up until now, Dr. Frakes doesn't have much of a good side at all. You can wonder about what could have made her so greedy and insane, but that wouldn't excuse all that she did. So she gets placed firmly in the bad tier. For our silver medal of evil, we're giving it to King Andras. While not a completely evil villain, Andras does some pretty evil and ultimately unexcusable things. Though he puts on a goofy and friendly mask, Andras is a total manipulator. We see him use people for his own gains, like chess pieces on a chessboard. Even Marcy, who he had a soft spot for, was still manipulated and ultimately betrayed twice.
Hate to break it to you, kiddo, but you've been duped.
From lying to her, to stabbing her, to giving her to the core as a host body, it's just really bad. And we haven't even mentioned the whole wanting to invade Earth and other dimensions thing yet. But while all this is bad, we will acknowledge that it wasn't entirely Andras' doing, as he himself was manipulated by his father, who pushed him to believe that he and the other kings of Newtopia were in the right. Things only got worse after he started to believe that one of his closest friends had betrayed him for no reason. But once the truth is revealed and Andras reads Leaf's secret letter, he's able to finally, genuinely open his heart. With this, he's able to help defeat the core, ridding himself of his father's control. But while we're happy that he was able to save himself, we just can't overlook all his crimes. But obviously, there's still one character that outmatches Andras in terms of evilness. Finally, the gold medal of evil goes to the core. Created through the amalgamation of the smartest minds in Amphibia, the core became a truly diabolical hive mind. The only thing the core is interested in is conquering and dominating other, lesser worlds. It's a total control freak to say the least, and with how strong its ambitions are, it's left with little to no morals. The core is so focused on keeping control of Amphibia that it would rather destroy it than give up any sort of power, showing how little it truly cared about its citizens. Manipulative, cruel, and sadistic, the core is about as dark as you can get when it comes to an overarching villain.
You fool! Do you have any idea what you've done?
There is no other character more suited for this spot than the core. Alright guys, that's it. Let us know in the comment section if you agree with our ranking, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.